is time for the 99th commemorative edition of the Terry's Talkin podcast. We are barreling toward number 100. David Campbell, your host here, and I am joined, as I am every week, by Mr. Terry Pluto, award-winning columnist from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Terry, I got to tell you, we put out a call last week, and you were asking people to send in their stories about Cleveland sports connections. But for our 100th episode, we're going to read some responses from listeners, and it is so crazy. We're getting emails from not only the Cleveland area, but also like Slovenia and Kenya and the United Kingdom. And people who listen to the podcast, Pluto Nation is everywhere. It's impressive.
I just sent you one that I got from a guy from Italy, since you and your wife were there recently. I guess you guys got together and you told him to listen to the podcast.
Listen to the podcast. So speaking of Italy, Terry, yes. I wanted to start off. This is kind of a fun thing, but I've been noticing on the TikTok machine and on YouTube Shorts and all this stuff that people are asking guys, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And some people apparently think about the Roman Empire every day. And I'm like, so I have two questions for you, Terry. Has Roberta ever asked you how often you think about the Roman Empire?
No.
Okay, so how often do you think about the Roman Empire? I'm going to ask you the question.
Well, doesn't Mr. Hero, have a Roman burger?
They do, yeah. So that would be an instance.
Not a lot, but that's what comes to mind. And so it's sort of like, I was on WTAM this morning. They asked me what I thought of Travis Kelce and
Taylor Swift.
I said nothing. I thought nothing of it. Whatever.
All right. Well, so you think of the Roman Empire when you're getting a Roman burger.
I mean, now and then, you act like the Roman Empire fell, all that kind of stuff. But it's just probably the Roman burger would be the closest. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I think of it maybe when I see Gladiator on TV, or there was that thing going on where tourists were writing on the Coliseum.
Oh, well, I was more interested to read the thing we had on cleveland.com about the 10 Italian restaurants. Now we're talking about what you want to think about. So,
all right, so we're going to get into some sports here, Terry.
All right,
the Browns.
Where's your favorite pizza?
Oh man, I don't know. I kind of bop around. Do you have one?
I like Angie's and Independence. It's very good. There's others too, but I do like that one.
I'm gonna have to get over there. We usually just try a different place every time we get pizza. So I'll have to check that one out. So maybe that could be the next thing. We'll ask people to send in their pizza.
You were bored with that, like I was the Roman Empire. So all right, what about the Browns? Let's roll.
I do think about pizza every day, but
okay, yeah.
All right, so the Browns, Terry. And then we'll get into a little bit of the Guardians, and the Cavs have media day on Monday. I want to kind of talk to you about that a little bit. You wrote about Kevin Stefanski after the game the other day, and we were talking last week about how, all right, the defense has been fixed, the special teams aren't a liability. This is going to be on Kevin Stefanski in the offense. And you made some really good points the other day, I thought, about the way Kevin Stefanski approached that game against Tennessee, coming right out of the blocks.
Yes, now I'm hearing, they let Deshaun play. They went to the empty backfield. They acted like he threw, 50,000 passes in that game. If you really looked, especially the first half, what was the idea to do is just to get Kevin to get Deshaun to complete some passes. That's it. And I actually believe that was the plan in the Pittsburgh game, but then the interception, as Joel Bitonio said, we kind of panicked. I appreciated the honesty on that. By the way, question: Deshaun Watson threw more passes in which game, Pittsburgh or Tennessee?
Well, I have the stats here, so I'll try it, but I'm pretty sure it was Pittsburgh because they were behind.
Yes. Quite a few more. I think it was 42-33.
Yeah, let me see here. So he was 22 of 40 against Pittsburgh, and he was 27 of 33 against the Titans.
Yes. So, he was on, but let's not get into this, let it rip because Nick Chubb's not there or whatever. No, let it. You have this great defense. That is your engine. So let them work, and also don't give the ball to the other team. It's not about being Charlie check down game manager, but it is about not, throw the ball away instead of taking the sack, And Deshaun was good, other than that weird play behind him to Elijah Moore. The rest of the time, he was either on target or he just didn't make destructive plays.
So we kind of microanalyze every game, Terry, as we should. But real quick, I want to pull back and get your thoughts on, do you think this is what the Browns had in mind all the time? Like, we're going to take the first year with all the legal issues with Deshaun. He's only going to play 6 games. It's going to be a rough ride. But going into year 2, we're going to have it all together. The defense is built up. And now, do you feel like this is what the Browns were hoping would start to happen right now?
Well, really, this is the first good game he's played. And I think by now they believed he would have gotten more than that, other than just one. So let's put some context to it. But I think the basic thing was, David, they just didn't want Baker Mayfield anymore. They were tired of Baker Mayfield. Then it was like, what are our options of getting a veteran quarterback? Matt Ryan, that kind of list of suspects. Carson Wentz, that's always floating around. No, we don't want to do that. Then there was the Watson thing. So they spent all their analytics and all their film work and all the stuff on Watson. He's going to be 27 when he's eligible. Their research showed that he would get between 6 and 8 game suspension, so they thought they'd get half a year out of it. And they just would ride it out. I mean, Jimmy Haslam did not build, and his father did not build a couple gas stations in Tennessee into this mega thing you saw around the country that Warren Buffett has since bought for $8 billion, I may add, by being conservative. They'll take a shot. Johnny Manziel, they'll take a shot. This is the kind of things they like to do. That's in how they are wired, the Haslams are. So they were willing to go for it. The thing about this shot, Johnny Manziel was one thing. Okay, you blew a first round pick. Here, you've got to at least come up with a pretty good quarterback for all that you've invested in him. To my point of view, I was glad to see that. I thought Deshaun was sticking with the game plan, and I didn't articulate real well that how I saw that game go. So in the first half, get them going, complete some passes, you're up 13-3. Meanwhile, 3 and out for Tennessee. By the middle of the third quarter, that offense is still doing 3 and out for Tennessee, and the defense is thinking, we'll never get off the field. And here came your coverage breakdowns, all that stuff, because their secondary is poor for Tennessee. The Browns knew this. It's soft and it's poor. So, and they also knew they couldn't really run the ball on Tennessee, but I give them credit. They did. They ran it 31 times, and yeah, that's correct. They ran it 31 times. And,
nice to have a lead, isn't it?
Yes, and they threw it 33. I think that's what Stefanski has in mind. And also, he averaged, look, he threw 289 yards. You got them into some breakdowns. And that's what it'll do. In other words, I think the defense not only wears down the opposing offense, the Browns defense is wearing down the opposing defense because they never get off the field.
That's a great point. Yeah. And Joel Batonia was talking about, like, we're standing over on the sidelines, like, we got to get ready. We're going right back in.
Right back in there, yeah. And
it's a feeling he hasn't had very often, yeah.
No, and also just their enthusiasm that you see. I know it's 3 games, but maybe Matt Gould knows this some. There's some high school team out there, maybe he's only allowed 1 touchdown in 3 games. But it's an incredible stat.
Well, I want to talk about that real quick, Terry, before we get into the defense. I saw a screenshot somebody took during the Bears loss the other day to Kansas City, and the Bears were scoring a late touchdown, and somebody shot like an overhead view of the sideline, and all the Bear players are scattered along the sideline. Their team is on the 10-yard line getting ready to go in for their only touchdown of the day as they're being blown out, and all the guys couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Like, they're all scattered out. You watch this Browns team. I mean, you've been around this team for a long time, Terry. I'm having a hard time remembering when a bunch of guys playing for the Browns had this much fun playing together. I mean, it feels like they love going to work every day at this point, and we haven't seen that a lot in the past.
No,
Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, I am. In 20, they had good spirit too. Maybe not quite as effusive on defense, but that was a together team in 20. That team overachieved. That won 11-5. I mean, you look in the rearview mirror now. They went 11-5 with Baker Mayfield, and Joe Woods is a defensive coordinator. And I'm not there. I'm just saying you see the difference. Yes, there's a lot more talent on the defensive line, but JOK looks better. Walker looks better. All these other guys that have been around, they just seem to be stepping their games up. Part of his talent, but a big part of his scheme and coaching.
For sure. The 20 team, it felt like they had fun because they were winning a little bit to me. And this team feels like we're going to have fun and we're going to try to win too. But we're just going to go out and play hard and have fun and support each other. And
that
feels genuine. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that came with Schwartz. Say, this is how we're going to play. I mean, look, Kevin Stefanski tried the jump or whatever that was with Watson. That's not him. But then again, Jim Tressel, my all-time favorite coaches, that wasn't him either. Close to the vest. So you don't.
Yeah, that
have
was really
to be
funny. Deshaun comes over the other day and he's trying to do a chest bump, and Kevin was like, "No, I'm good on the ground."
Yeah, it's like I don't know how to do this, but he was happy, and that was a big thing. Whereas on defense, Schwartz came in with this is how we do it, and the other guys look at Schwartz and know he's done it before in a couple of places, and they all talk to each other in the NFL like in any other business. And the word was out, you will like playing for this guy even when he rips you up a little bit, because it does pay off, and he does have your best interest at heart. And frankly, I heard one early press conference. I mean, Schwartz said something about, a lot of the guys that I had, especially linemen, they got paid.
Which is what every player loves to have happen. So,
and I think what he's selling them is, when we win and we're having a good time and playing together, we also get paid.
All right, well, Terry, speaking of numbers, let's get into some of these numbers on this defense. All right, so they're allowing 163 yards a game. That's best in the league. The Bills are number 2 at 253. The Browns are allowing 10.7 points per game. That's number 1 in the league, and that includes the pick six.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they roll that in on some of these stats, but they're allowing 52 rushing yards per game. The Bills let's see who's number 2. The 49ers are number 2, I think, at 53 yards a game.
The big thing.
And the Eagles. The Eagles are at 43. So the Browns are second in the league in rushing
yards per carry, where there's like 2 point something. It's just incredible.
The Browns have limited opponents to 8 of 41 on third downs. That's 19%. They're plus 41 in point differential.
We have to check this, by the way, David. I heard, and I'm going to give, I believe it was Tony Grossi, I'm going to give credit, that he said from his research, the best NFL team ever on third down percentage, limiting the opposition, was like 24 or 25% conversion.
Really? And the Browns are at 19.5 through 3 games.
It was one of Belichick's New England teams. But I think he was still working on that. But he said that was the lowest he had found so far.
Well, that is something we'll have to be tracking. So the 491 total yards allowed by the Browns are the fewest allowed by the team in history through 3 games.
Well, I mean, I guess how far, I don't know if maybe it's those Paul Brown teams in the old days, but
possibly.
But even the Kozar teams and that, they had good defenses, they had good secondaries, but they were not, in any way what we've seen here.
Yeah, and I just want to run through these a couple more here. Yeah. The Browns have forced a negative 106 opponent yards and 26 negative plays.
Jeez.
Those are both 4th in the NFL. They've allowed only 21 first downs. That's best in the league, and that's 20 less than the Bills, who are second with 41. You've written about this a lot, Terry. They've allowed only 2 opponent drives inside the red zone and just 3 points. And one of those drives came after a fumble when the Browns fumbled. So
it's like defense don't blame us. I also think when you look at some of the numbers here, they've done that. Well, I think they only have 2 turnovers forced. I mean, you could say maybe they should turn them over, or maybe just the fact the other team doesn't even stay on the field long enough to make a turnover. It's just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out.
Well, that kind of is the next thing, Terry, right? Is
Yeah.
they forced a fumble. Myles Garrett forced that fumble the other day, and the ball was, skittering out toward the sidelines, and the Browns acted like it was a pass
Mm-hmm.
and let it go. JOK ran right past it. He probably could have scooped that thing up and made some yards out of
Well,
that.
I would like to
So
sit in at film session, by the way. Can you see Schwartz running that in slow motion and all kinds? Well, there it
yeah,
goes again. Anybody plan on picking it up?
yep.
I'm going to tell
Always grab it and go. You never know what'll happen. So
Bill Glass, who Myles Garrett finally passed Bill's all-time Browns sack record, by the way. And Bill was a mentor of mine in prison ministry and played for the Browns in the 60s. And we got on talking about film sessions with Paul Brown. And he said he had a game where he jumped off the side like twice. And Paul Brown would just play it. Oh, there's Bill off sides. And then they would go back to something. Then he'd flip back to it again. And then he'd go to a couple other things. And then he'd flip back to it again. And then that would happen. Then he said, he just showed it again. He goes, they looked at me and just said in a quiet voice, Bill, tell me, do the great ones do that? And
what
that
a
was
line, huh?
it. That was it. No more mention of it. So in other words, he showed it 3 times without speaking, other than there goes Bill, but that's it. And then the last one, other than, tell me, Bill, do the great ones do that?
Well, Myles Garrett does every once in a
Yes, he does. Well, every game he jumps off sides. But where I'm
Yeah.
going with this, I do think with that fumble rolling along, Schwartz will have something like that.
Yes, and probably maybe not as calm as Paul Brown did.
Yeah, but it was one of those. He talked about how powerful the image was.
Mm-hmm.
That you
Especially
see
replaying
it,
it 3
you
times.
see it, you see
Yeah.
it, and of course he says, I'm 6'4", like 250. Back then that was huge. He goes, right now I'm under my chair by the time he says that to me, and I'm wishing I would disappear.
With 6 words from Paul Brown.
Yeah.
All right, Terry, I wanted to ask real quick. Do you think, and it's only, it is only 3 games in, but from what you've seen from this defense, do you think this could go down as one of the better Browns defenses that we've seen, at least since '99, maybe longer than that? I mean, I don't know how far we want to go back, but you've been around the Browns for a long time. Does this team remind you of anybody? The way they play and the style and the aggressiveness and the fun so far?
I'd have to look up the numbers. Belichick had a good defense in '94 here. I'd have to go take a look at that. Nothing is close since '99. Like the teams in the '80s, they were offensive driven. They were not. They had nice defenses in that, but nothing like this. Now we'll have to see when they go through, the rest of the season. I'm fascinated. I'm very confident the defense facing Lamar Jackson, but we know how he's torn up the Browns in the past. So, and that will be a different challenge because the first 3 quarterbacks they've played were not particularly mobile. Burrow, Pickett, and Tannehill. I mean, they can move a little bit, but nothing like what we're going to see with Jackson.
Well, yeah, big game coming up on Sunday. 3 teams in the AFC North are 2-1, and the Browns are one of them. So, I want to spend a couple minutes talking about Myles Garrett. Terry, what did you think of him the other day? And do you think there was a lot of discussion here and elsewhere about Myles Garrett versus TJ Watt last week? And do you think you heard any of that? And I don't know, what did you think of what you saw on Sunday from him?
I'm not sure about the Watt thing, but what I believe has happened with Garrett is, number one, he has a coordinator he can respect. I'm not sure he respected the other guys. Maybe Greg Williams when he first started, because Williams, I believe, had him as in that first year or 2. But even that, he was mad because Williams is limiting his moves or something. I remember there was some talk like that. So one is, and secondly, the excuse that Myles would have privately that I never was really surrounded with a whole lot of talent on the line is gone. And he knows that. I believe we have to check this too, that Myles Garrett has never played on a team where anybody but him had at least 10 sacks. Last year, I believe, I think Taven Bryan or whatever had like 3 sacks. And, there was nobody else. So it's kind of like you can't complain. You're out there by yourself. Not when you got Ogbo, who I really like, by the way. Ogbo is kind of a sneak attack guy. We see Desarius Smith and Tomlinson, but Ogbo's look very good too. And even Jordan Elliott's making some plays. It's all there. And then also, David, remember the line of Schwartz, take the seatbelts off? It's really off of Miles. I mean, he's wandering around all over the place. Tight ends he's doing basketball moves and this. And I really believe Schwartz let him loose to have some fun.
Oh man, talk about fun. I think there was like 14 minutes left the other day. And they lined Myles Garrett up to Tannehill's blind side where he usually is, and the Titans put a tight end and an extra blocker over there to block him. So Garrett's like, all right, I'm going to move to the other side. So he goes to the other side of the line. The tight end and the extra blocker follow him over there.
Yeah.
And then Garrett's like, all right, you guys are going to follow me here. I'm going back where I was. So he goes back to the right side of the Browns defensive line, and the guys follow him back over again. And by this point, the play clock is down to nothing. The Titans have to call a timeout.
Yeah, Tannehill,
And
like that.
yeah, and they showed Jim Schwartz on the sideline, and he's just busting up laughing.
Yeah.
At the lengths these the Titans are going to block Myles Garrett, and rightfully so. But yeah, that was really something. And you're talking about the impact he's having.
But if you want to put two guys on Myles Garrett, somebody's not going to be blocked. It's as simple as that. I mean, somebody is going to have a really good lane to the quarterback, because an NFL person said to me, he says they're not getting like a lot of sacks from the tackles coming up the middle, but you could see the push. These guys aren't just stepping up in the pocket, because a lot of times that rush comes from the outside. And what happens? They tell the quarterback, step up closer to the line of scrimmage in the pocket. But Tomlinson is coming with whether it's Shelby Harris or whoever they have, and they're pushing back. So it's really there. And then, of course, the secondary now, they know who they're supposed to cover. They're staying with that guy. And that way it really is, you want to be good, cover your man. That's kind of how Schwartz is. If not, I'll get somebody else to cover your man.
Yeah, and just the consistency, Terry. If you watch the games, when the ball is snapped, if you watch in slow motion, and regardless of who's on the defensive line, all four guys are coming off at the same time.
Yep.
They're coming off hard and they're coming off low. It's like it's four clones. It's all in unison. It's like a powerful 300-pound ballet moving up the field at the same time or something. It's really impressive.
And I appreciate the fact you don't have stupid taunting penalties. And I've not seen a lot of cheap shots. They just slam you to the ground and that's it. Then they dance around celebrating, but they're not, glowing over you and pointing, and you're not having flags going for even on roughing the passer, which is hard to avoid sometimes. It really is. They haven't had too many of those.
All right, so an interesting matchup coming up Sunday against the Ravens down at Cleveland Browns Stadium. And Terry, I know we've been wanting to do a weekly kicker review. Dustin Hopkins had a nice day on Sunday. Do you want to talk about him real fast?
All right, 48 yards, no problem. 52 yards, no problem in Cleveland. So he is now 7 of 8. The only one he missed was the 43-yarder, I believe, in Pittsburgh. And it's just sort of reassuring to say 3 points when he goes out there to kick. And remember, 3 points are better than none. So when you have a good kicker, sometimes you don't have to go for a fourth down. You just, with this defense, take the points. 3 words for 3 points.
And you're right about with this defense, Terry. Those are 3 important words. 3 points can be even bigger than 3 points sometimes when you got a defense that's playing like this one. So, all right. And as I am the unofficial president of the DeJuan Jones fan club, I do want to mention, and PFF grades, they're a guide. They're not the Bible of how a person played, but DeJuan Jones was the Browns' highest graded offensive lineman this past week.
Wow.
65.3. Ethan Posich was at 64.3. Michael Dunn only had 2 plays. Nick Harris had 1 play. Joel Bitonio, 58.4. Jedrick Wills, 56.9. And Wyatt Teller, 54.8. So DeJuan Jones, people were watching him against Watt the previous week, and he had a nice game against the Titans. So something to watch. And just thought I'd mention that.
I'm looking 3 sacks the Browns allowed and 5 quarterback hits. First of all, that line for Tennessee is good. Their secondary is terrible. The defensive line is good. And secondly, Deshaun makes it tough on the linemen. I mean, he's going to get hit. He's going to give up some sacks just because of I haven't looked at the stats for this week, but the first 2 weeks he was holding the ball the second longest in the NFL. And in his last 6 games of previous years, he was holding on the ball the second longest in the NFL. So those are really nice numbers. And maybe DeJuan is just, he is so large and he has that basketball feet. Part of the ability of a guy to be a good big man in basketball is to be able to move not so much vertically, but horizontally. And that's a big part of pass blocking.
All right, Terry, anything else you want to mention on the Browns?
I think that this is going to be a very revealing week because now you really do have the how do you handle success? Everybody's saying you're great again. Baltimore's coming off a tough loss, and Lamar Jackson has tormented the Browns. So let's see what comes of all that.
All right, and then the Browns have a really early bye the following week in Week 5, so they get to take a break after this string of 4 games. So, hey, Terry, I wanted to read a quick letter we got, an email from Jack in Erie, a longtime listener of the podcast, before we move on from the Browns. And Jack says, "Hey, Dave and Terry, the greatest Brown since they have returned in 1999 is Jimmy Donovan.
Yeah.
My dad had season tickets, and we used to come up and back from Erie and listen to Jimmy. It's Jimmy." And, we want to wish Jimmy all the best as he's away here getting treatment. And I know I can speak for Browns fans everywhere when we all miss him and get back soon.
And as Doug Deacon said, 2 of the toughest guys I've ever been around, and I have a hard time deciding whether it's Nev Chandler or Jim Donovan. Because Nev, who was here earlier in the 80s, some of our older fans remember him. Nev died at 47 of cancer. And, of course, Jimmy's been battling leukemia. And Nev also says, I probably would throw Casey Coleman in there. He battled pancreatic cancer, but unfortunately, Casey died pretty quickly. And it's just, this thing, he goes, and I saw that thing, in football injuries, he said, but watching these guys, what they went through with cancer and leukemia and chemo and all that, when he's talking to me about that, because a few weeks ago I wrote about Doug, and he just brought that. He always brings that up on that. He had tears in his eyes about that. He didn't cry when he's talking about different things with the Browns or his own broken bones, but that he did. So, yeah, Jimmy, get back, get well soon.
Yeah, and thanks for that letter, Jack. I know there's thousands and thousands of Browns fans who feel the same way. So, all right, Terry, we're going to take a break here. When we get back, I want you to talk about the question that you asked Terry Francona the other day that kind of made him stop and think. So we'll get into that when we return on Terry's Talkin.
All right, be right back in a moment.
Sure.
The NFL season's only a few weeks old, man. We've already seen some amazing finishes, some incredible storylines. Don't get left on the sidelines. Get in on the NFL action with some great offers from DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. That's right, just throw down $5 on any matchup to walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football's more fun when you're in on the action, so download the DraftKings Sports app now and sign up with code CLETALK. That's CLETALK. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, with code CLETALK. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana, 21 and over, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
We're back on Terry's Talkin'. Terry Pluto and David Campbell. We are going to get into the Guardians here, Terry. They're 74 and 83. You stopped in the other day to interview Terry Francona, and he's heading into the last week of his managerial career, and 11 pretty impressive seasons in Cleveland. And I thought it was interesting. You actually asked him a question of all the interviews that he's done. Something you asked him kind of made him stop and pause. Talk about that story for a minute.
I think it was a pregame thing, and he probably was the usual how's Bieber's arm or this or that. And he's been periodically asked about retiring. But I just came out with, what do you enjoy about managing? Pause. Goes, well, I wasn't expecting that one. And I said, well, you've been doing it for 23 years. He said, yeah. And then he stopped. That's the thing. It's like, if you give him something good, you have to wait, too. Let him run with it. And the story's posted on cleveland.com, and I believe it'll be in tomorrow's paper. First of all, he said that he didn't go into baseball to be a manager. He goes, I've been around baseball since I could crawl. I mean, his father, Tito, played for the Tribe and played 15 years in the big leagues. In fact, Terry was a star. He played 10 years himself. And he said, I really enjoyed being a bench coach. I love managing in the minors. He said, I just like being part of the game. And I think, he kind of gravitated towards managing. And I said something like, we've been doing it for 23 years. He goes, yeah, talk to the people in Philadelphia. They'll never believe that. Because in his first 4 years, I mean, he had terrible records there. And when you talk about how things work out in life, he had made friends with Mark Shapiro and Antonetti kind of just along the way somewhere. And when Francona was fired in Philadelphia, he then Cleveland brought him in just for a year as one of those kind of advisory things, come hang around, figure out what you want to do with your life next. And so he got to know them, and then he went after that. I forgot whether he went to Texas or Oakland, but he was a coach in both of those places, and then eventually ended up managing the Red Sox. But that experience he had after he was fired by the Phillies set it up. So in 2012, after that, when Francona had been out for a year from Boston, and he saw that the Tribe was looking for a manager. At that point, they had fired Maniaca. Sandy Alomar had managed the last 6 games, but they said they were throwing it open to interview people. And so he called Shapiro and Antonetti. Said, well, would you consider me? And I guess he even wrote up some notes and things he wanted to do. And that opened the door because of the relationship that he had with that year after he was fired by Philadelphia. I think there's something about Francona, too. He kind of remembers who was there for him when he was down.
Well, they're going to be having a whole series of events on Wednesday night, kind of a fan appreciation for Tito thing during the evening, and that'll be a special night out there. But Terry, as we enter like the last week here, what do you think you're going to remember most about Terry Francona's time as a Cleveland manager? What do you think his legacy will be when you look back on it?
Well,
10
he's
years
got
from
a
now,
bunch of them, but the most, and it's too bad fans couldn't see this part of it because in spring training, he will do, maybe 10 minutes kind of on the record or whatever in the press room. And in Goodyear, there were not too many writers around, there maybe 3 or 4 of us. And then you go, okay, Cheryl's the tape recorder. And he would just talk about, it could have been when he played high school basketball or just kind of things that are going on, old stories. I remember he used to be very interested. I was telling him one time about Dennis Gates with Cleveland State's basketball. He loves college basketball. Just that stuff, the human side of him. And then, his stuff that later on he'd tell you for the record, well, I only own 2 pairs of jeans and all my shirts I have are freebies, and just the human side of him. And, he's a stress eater. He'd eat 10 donuts when he was feeling it. I mean, that's part of the reason for his health problems have been as such. But you even get glimpses of it sometimes in the on-the-record stuff, the humanization of him. And when you guys here for 11 years, you can't fake that. I mean, I think that's why I asked him, I said, 11 years, managing one place is an eternity. He goes, you got that right. And he said that this is pretty revealing. He said, I picked Cleveland for the people, but I also believe they could win here. Don't misunderstand. He goes, I'm still testing and turning some nights after a couple of these bad games of late, even though he knows he's out. He said, but here's the thing. When you're in meetings here, and when I walk out the door, I don't feel like they were just rolling their eyes at me and what I said. He goes, that's not the case everywhere. And so clearly it was what was going on in Boston. I mean, think
Yeah,
about it. They're rolling their eyes at a guy that won 2 World Series where they never won any.
yeah, including coming back from a 3-0 deficit, which had probably never been done before. But I really liked what you were saying about the humanization that he
Mm-hmm.
brought to the game. And baseball is we have instant replay now, so you don't see Billy Martin going, type tirades where
Yeah.
guys are kicking dirt on the umpire. And one thing about Terry Francona, he's one of, I think, the last maybe baseball characters
Mm-hmm.
that we might see for a while, because he's a baseball lifer. He loved the game, and like you said, he didn't intend on being a manager. It just kind of happened. But baseball just exudes from him, and the fun of the game and the interesting things he does away from the park. Like, I think there's not a lot of characters as many as there used to be in the game, because it's kind of been sterilized a little bit. And I think especially the writers and the reporters are going to miss some of that from him.
Well,
A lot of that from him.
they don't want you to look at them as human. And by the way, Kevin Stefanski is a good guy. And I finally got a chance to talk to him a little one-on-one when there's a small group of us in West Virginia. He invited us over to a sports bar. And it was the first time where it was a casual. Think about that. The guy's been coaching for 4 years. Casual setting where we could just kind of talk about different stuff. The good guy. But you put him in front of the microphone, and most of these guys are like that. They go into this with the idea, I don't want to say anything to upset anybody. I don't want to say anything that frankly could even be quoted. I just want to get out of there alive. For example, he'll say things like, yes, my Kareem Hunt. Well, I know, Kareem is, really glad to be back, and he's happy to be here. Of course, a lot of the guys are happy to be here. You ever notice that? Even when he makes a statement on something, he goes, this player needs to work harder, but, well, we all got to work harder. It's like, no, just say it. You don't get that, like that defensive stuff. It's not just him. I swear they're programming him, these guys, this way. And my guess is whomever is the manager next will probably be that. Now, I will say an exception to that in town is J.B. Bickerstaff. He's sort of more like the Francona mode. He's very interesting to listen to. His love of the game comes out. I mean, these guys have to love the game, but they
A lot of
hide
times they
it.
don't share it, though.
They
Yeah, they
just
don't
hide
share
it.
it.
They hide it. They have personality, but they hide it. They're just afraid. And I know they all go through all these seminars and things like that. So you're correct. I mean, and at this point in his career, nobody was going to really tell Terry Francona how to run a press conference.
Well, and I'd have to go back and track this, Terry, but I think Terry Francona is a pretty smart guy. And I think, like, during the 2016 World Series, or maybe if they're in the middle of a losing streak, it seems like he'd come out. There would be some story about somebody flashing him when he's on. It seems like he'd attract the attention to himself.
Yeah.
With some interesting thing that happened to him, or some story that he came up with that would kind of pull the pressure off of his team sometimes. And I think that was really shrewd. And I don't know if he did it he probably did do it on purpose, because I think he's really
he's
smart.
After the time in Philadelphia and Boston, apparently the 12 years in 2 major markets, this was a polished man. This guy was a finished product coming in here. This is not training wheels manager. I mean, this guy came in 2 major markets, won 2 World Series, been fired twice, came here which he considered home. He grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and so he was ready to go. The other thing that Francona, even off the record or whatever, you never heard him say, well, how are we supposed to win here? We don't have any money. By the way, you can get that from some others. Now, he would say, we all understand the budget thing. You knew it going in. That's what he would always say. And with people like this, you just try to work around it. And then he would say how the baseball decisions were made for baseball reasons, which the implication is elsewhere was not the case. So,
yeah, and I think his players appreciated him because he never threw them under the bus and always stood up for them. And
no, he would say, well, you got to make better plays than that. We have to do a better job on that. As he said, you can be honest without killing them. That was the exact quote he gave me.
That's a good T-shirt. Someone should make that.
Mm-hmm.
The Terry Francona T-shirt. So, all right, so that'll be winding down this week, and we're expecting that early next week we will get the official news that his time in Cleveland has come to an end, and he'll be probably spending a lot of time at University of Arizona basketball and baseball games,
Yeah.
knowing him when he's able to get past some of the health stuff. So, Terry, you've been tracking some. Let's start looking forward. You've been tracking some of the prospects, the Guardians prospects in the minor league seasons winding down if they haven't already. And I know there's a few people you've really been paying special attention to. Why don't you get into that for a minute?
Well, I know when Jones had a really good year for Colorado. The last I saw, he was hitting like about 280 with 17 homers. I haven't looked for several days, but so people go, who do they get for him? And the player they got is a guy they had been targeting for a while, Juan Brito. And Baseball America named him, Juan Brito, the top prospect in the Guardians farm system. Brito just turned 22 3 days ago. He started the year at Class A. He ended up at AAA. And that rise, overall, he had 271 with an 811 OPS, 14 homers, 75 RBIs. Primarily a second baseman, could play some third. And I go, wow, another middle infield or whatever. If this guy get hit, I don't care. Find a place to put him out there. And then I ran into a scout from an American League team. This is when I was in Lake County working on a story on Chase DeLauder, another player we'll talk about. And so I was talking to him about different Guardians prospects and that. And I said, what do you think? Because Brito had just gone up to AA. I said, what do you think of Brito? He says, now, listen how I'm explaining this. He is like a young Jose Ramirez. Not the Jose Ramirez hitting 25 or 30 homers. But if you remember how Jose was a really polished baseball player in his early 20s, good base runner, kind of a dumpy looking body, but he could play ball, just a ball player, and just a selective hitter. And he says, this guy, I think, will be in the big league soon, and he'll be productive. I mean, you can't. He says, that's why I say they're not the Jose you see now that they want to build a statue to. But the kid, for example, that hit, close to 300 in 2016 with, I think it was 12 or 14 homers. And then later on was the guy that, continued to develop. By the way, just to make a point on when you really want to get a bat in the lineup, people may have forgotten, but in his past, Jose Ramirez did play 50 games in the outfield, primarily in 2016. And
I
so,
forgot about that. Yeah.
yes, he did. And like, for example, I'm looking here in 2016, he came in, and that's when he hit 312 with 11 homers. They extended him. And then next year, by the way, he had never hit more than, I'm looking here, I think like 9 homers in the minors. And then the next year he hit 29 homers. I mean, nobody saw that coming. But what they did see was a guy in the minors who had a career 304 batting average. And then when he came up, and got a chance to play full time in 2016, he batted 312. So that's the player. And I'll take that player anytime. Now, you can say they shouldn't have traded Nolan Jones or whatever, but at least the guy they got for him, and it's not just me saying it or a random American League scout, Baseball America also put their seal of approval on him too. I'm sure they put their seal of approval on guys that have flamed out. But I was encouraged by that. And then I got a text from Jim Clark, who's covered Rubber Ducks baseball back to when they're the Akron Arrows. And he said he saw a little bit of the young Jose also in Brito. So there you go.
Wow. All right. Coming in from multiple sources. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Let's see, Terry. We got a quick.
The other one just mentioned,
Yeah.
Kyle Manzardo, the guy that they got for, by the way, Aaron Savali, the last I looked, his ERA was up over 5 in Tampa. It's, again, I didn't wish him ill, but you just they knew that was fool's gold. They just did. And that was, now we'll see how Manzardo ends up. He had a bad shoulder early in the year. He came back. He was out for like about 6 weeks before he finally finished the year. And I just checked his stats at AAA Columbus. Batting average looks ho-hum, 256. But the OPS, anything over 800 is good. Over 900 is very good. It's 938. 92 plate appearances. He had 6 homers 8 doubles, drove in 16 runs. Baseball America also said that he's really starting to come around. By the way, that's only his second pro season. Like Brito, he's only 22. And I know there's prospects, this and that, but sometimes prospects turn into good players.
Yeah, and that could be one of those trades where Guardians fans were upset when it went down, but it could pay off for a number of years. So that'll be interesting to watch. So
one guy told me, he said Manzardo may not be a guy that hits 30 homers, but he could be a guy that hits like 20-some homers and 35 doubles. In other words, that kind of player. I'll take that too. I'm real interested about anybody that get hit, because when I look at that, you got all right. Who's the hitters? Go ahead, David. The hitters on the Guardians are tick tock, tick tock.
I'm just going around. Josh Naylor.
Yeah.
Jose Ramirez.
Yeah.
And Andres Jimenez when he's hot. He's hot.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, the rest of these guys, I like Quan as a leadoff guy, but can't come up with anybody else.
I probably would put Quan on that list. I think he might end up with a higher batting average than Jose by the end of the season. So
yeah, and also I'll say Quan. He got through the second year stuff, which is a challenge. He plays every day. The guy he's small. He's about my size, and believe me, I don't know what he's listed at, but that means he's like 5'9". And he plays every day. He plays hard all the time. You could put him in center field next year if you want to do that. He'll be a well above average center fielder. He's Gold Glove in left field. He steals bases, plays hard. But all right, we got Quan. You got on your list. We got Quan on your list. We got Jose on your list. You got Naylor on your list, and that list has plenty of room for all comers.
They will find a home, I'm sure, and especially in left field. So, hey, Terry, I've been holding this letter for a couple of weeks, and I told Doug Meredith, long-time listener from Akron, I would try to get to it today. We can just get into it real quick. He says, what do you think? He says, Dave and Terry, what do you think about the emphasis on limiting pitches and innings on pitchers, especially young pitchers? Bob Feller must be rolling over in his grave, he says. Thanks for that, Doug. We saw a lot of this, Terry, this year with the young guys that the Guardians brought up. They really wanted to monitor their innings and make sure they weren't getting overused. It's a different game than when Bob Feller played, but do you think it's the right approach, too cautious? I mean, not just the Guardians, but everybody in baseball does this, obviously.
When I was watching Lake County, their guys were going 4 innings, and that was it. I mean, unless they only threw like 40 pitches in 4 innings, but that was it. These guys, they don't know what to do, Dave. They don't know how to avoid arm injuries. My theory, now you're hearing, well, the pitch clock is causing it. No, these guys have been having Tommy John and everything else for years and years. All right, the appearance of radar guns everywhere at almost every level of baseball, and the accent on throwing every pitch about as hard as you can, not just fastballs, but breaking balls, spin rates. Remember you hear that? Well, you try to get a hard slider, that spin rate, that is rough on your arm. And I think you have these young men, even go back to high school or whatever, they're coming off the mound going, what did I throw? What did I get? Did you get them out? But no, it's on that thing. The average fastball now is approaching 94 miles an hour. I remember when I covered when the radar guns were first coming out in the early 80s, it was like 90. And then a few years ago, I want to say about 8 or 10 years ago, it just hit 92. So it's 94. But think about what the stress on the arms. That is your problem. So you can count all your pitches and all that. And here's what I remember I was talking to somebody, and I said, you guys are just obsessed with strikeout rates. He goes, well, nothing can go wrong with strikeouts. Correct, unless the catcher misses the ball. But what about what it does to the pitcher's arms when you want a guy that averages 12 or 13 strikeouts per 9 innings? So, all right, that's my rant about it, and I'm sticking with it. I will suggest it's a book. Jeff Passan wrote a book called The Arm, son of Rich Passan, former Point Dealer writer. He kind of goes over the top on some of this, but
no pun intended, right?
Yes,
over the top.
Over
delivery.
the top. That's not a great delivery either. So for your arm, but it does explain. He kind of laid out some of this. It's got me thinking about it, and then I began reading about the obsession with spin rate. And I'm going, oh, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Think the twisting of your arm and elbow. Remember, some of us when we were younger, oh, you can't throw a curveball till you're like 13 or something because you don't want to hurt your arm. So there you go.
Yeah, well, and all this stuff is happening with 13, 14-year-olds with spin rate and radar guns and all. Like it seems like it's easy to buy a radar gun now. You just order it online.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, all right, Terry. Let's move on to the Cavaliers. I want to keep us moving here. Media day for the Cavs on Monday, and then they're going to get into camp. I know you're planning on heading over to media day and talking to people. What are you most curious to find out, and who do you want to talk to? What do you want to learn on Monday?
I mean, one of the stories that are coming out of there now, Donovan Mitchell will have, I think he's now, and we have to find out exactly when he could sign an extension, but it's coming up soon. And, how do you feel about that? And then I would like to look at Evan Mobley physically. Did you get bigger? And then I went on to talk to JB Bickerstaff and say, okay, you traded for shooters, specifically Strus, who's a guy that runs a lot of motion, comes around picks to catch the ball, catch and shoot. He's not a stand catch and shoot. Niang, the other guy they got, who I'm very high on, by the way, but he's more of a regular corner 3 guy. But Strus likes to move and catch the ball and shoot it. Do you plan on having that in your offense? Because otherwise, I have not seen that in the past with the Cavs. So those are just a couple of things there. How about you?
Yeah, the JB thing, that's where I was going to go, Terry. At the end of every season, the players all go in with the coaches and the front office, and they're like, all right, here's what we like that you did, and here's what we'd like you to work on. And I mean, you heard it as much as I did. JB was taking some grief after the playoff loss to the Knicks about, like, did he make enough adjustments? I'm kind of curious, like, what did JB do in the offseason to improve his game? Like, did he go hang out with some coaches that maybe they could trade ideas? I mean, coaching is an evolving art. We know that regardless of what sport you're in, you have to be changing, learning all the time, or you're going to fall behind. And I'd like to hear JB talk about maybe what he did this offseason to kind of make sure that he was ready for this year, just like the players had to do. So,
and I'm sure they dissected those tapes from the Knicks series. I mean, for all the talk about rebounding, they got crushed on the boards. They held the Knicks to 97 points. I think they only averaged 94. If you can't average 100 points, you're lucky to win a game in a series in the modern NBA.
Yeah, and this will be a different looking Cavs team, and I think a lot of the questions you ask are kind of, I think, where fans want to be in terms of what this is going to look like and what they're going to run and all that. So, all right, Terry, I think we're good here. Anything else you want to get into today?
No, that is it.
All right. I think we should give a couple of plugs here real quick. Terry has a weekly newsletter that we've been mentioning on the podcast. If you sign up for it, it's free. Just go to cleveland.com/newsletters and you can click the box. It literally takes like 1 minute and you'll get everything Terry has done in a given week in your email every Monday, so you can be sure not to miss anything. We also wanted to make sure we mention it is our 100th episode next week, and we've been asking fans to email in stories about what their connection to Cleveland sports is, where they live now, why they still care. What was the other thing you were asking about last week, Terry?
I was really interested where they were listening to this too. Right. Speaking of where, I want to thank about 100 people showed up in Shelby, Ohio at the Marvin Library, where I'd never been to Shelby or to the library there, and we just had a great time. I had a wonderful drive, by the way. It's almost worth making it from Ashland over to Shelby. You could check the different routes. It goes through Amish country. I saw at least of the 6 carriages with the horses and farmland, and it was really terrific. So I want to thank everybody in Shelby and say, if you want to ride through the country, get off of 71 at Ashland and head towards Shelby.
Beautiful part of the state and a great turnout. That's impressive. All right, Terry, we are done. Catch us next week. We'll have the special 100th edition of Terry's Talkin.